Hello everyone and welcome. Today we're going to be playing a little bit of Legacy. Today's deck of choice is going to be Blue-Black Death's Shadow. This has been one of the hot decks in Legacy at the moment. It came out of the most recent Pro Tour, and we're going to give it a shot today. Pretty much seems to be pretty standard for most Delver decks. You got your cantrips, you've got Brainstorm, you've got Ponder, you've got your Delver, and your Death Shadow is your turn 1 plays, and later in the game you have Gurmag Angler. But those are going to be the main ways that you're trying to kill your opponent, followed up by your standard Legacy Disruption. You have Daze, you have Force of Will, as well as some discard spells. You have a set of Thought Seizes, and these reanimates are actually super sweet. This was an addition from the Channel Fireball deck. It's certain games you get to go turn 1, cycle a Street Wraith, and reanimate your Street Wraith. Those are pretty darn good spots. Sometimes you get to live the dream and reanimate your opponent's Gristlebrand if you're playing against Reanimator. But those are definitely lesser games, especially now that people are starting to know that they're playing Reanimate in the main deck, so they're going to be a little less vulnerable to it. Sideboard's nothing extravagant. We're playing 3 Surgical Extractions, 3 Dreaded Knights, 1 Bitter Blossom, and 1 Diabolic Edict to help out with your lands matchup, and also in the mirror. You're required to play extra copies of cards that are good against Death and Taxes. Death and Taxes is a very popular deck right now. It's cheap to build, and it's a high quality deck. Also one of your worst matchups, so you definitely have to play some cards for it. There are 2 Liliana the Last Hope, 2 Hymn to Tarak as a great catch-all answer in any of the fair matchups. Throne of Geth is a little bit of a weird one. I was definitely skeptical about it when I first seen it in the list, and then I tried it out a couple times, and it actually does the job. Chalice for 1 is incredibly good against this deck, so you definitely need a way to deal with it. Blue and black really doesn't have any. There's no artifact destruction, so you're kind of priced into finding an unorthodox answer. I mean, if you can't counter it, this is one of the better ways to get it off the board since you don't have any straight up removal spells. So that's the only card that's a little strange in the list, but we're going to give it a spin. We're going to see how it goes, and we're going to hop in our competitive league here. I have toyed with this deck here a little bit. I've given it a couple of games, and I used to play a lot of Delver, so in the Grixis Death Shadow deck when it was in Modern, so I've definitely had a fair share of experience with Death Shadow before, but it's a little bit different in Legacy. You have to worry about Swords to Plowshares. Swords to Plowshares is definitely the biggest weakness of this deck, so that's one of the cards you do have to be concerned with. I mean, this hand is very close to keepable, but this is pretty risky. I mean, you have a Force of Will in case you play against a combo deck, and you have a Street Wraith that's just going to be a random cycle. I mean, if you had any land, this would be a keep, but this I think is just a little bit too risky. There's a lot of times that you'll keep a hand with a blind Street Wraith, or even when Gitaxian Probe used to be legal, keep a hand with a Gitaxian Probe and hope it cycles into a land. If it hits, it's great. If it doesn't hit, you're obviously in a lot of trouble, so I think we're going to throw this one back. Fortunately, this is a very similar hand, but it's actually worse, because now you don't even have the Street Wraith, you don't have the Delvers. So we're going to have to go to 5 here, unfortunately. Alright, this will be a keep. Force of Will is interesting. I mean, if you're playing against a combo deck, you obviously want it. If you're not playing against a combo deck, this card's going to be really bad. And we're also on the mulligan, so I'm actually going to bottom this. You're on a mulligan to 5. You really don't want to go down any more cards than you have to. So we're going to put the Force on the bottom. Grove of the Burn Willows generally means lands. Either lands or aggro loam. Lands, okay. So that's going to make this Death Shadow a lot harder to leverage. We could actually just be pretty close to dead already. This Dismember and this Fatal Push are going to do nothing, so that's 2 more dead cards in our hand. So, I mean, we were really hoping that this was a matchup where these cards are going to be relevant, but the way it looks, it's not going to be. Okay, so our opponent's on 5 cards. I mean, we can definitely go Flooded Strand, get a Watery Grave, and Thoughtseize our opponent. That'll take us down to 16. We're definitely going to have to do a lot of work to get this Death Shadow online, but we'll give it a shot. We'll see how it goes here. Hopefully this Brainstorm will let us shuffle away these bad cards. Alright, so our opponent is playing Aggro Loam. We're definitely not taking Light from the Loam. Punishing Fire doesn't do anything, so we're going to take this Liliana of the Veil. No, yeah, I can say if they just fire off the Wasteland, we could just be dead. At least Wasteland is a reasonable draw for us. We have to cut him off in this Grove. Treetop Village is interesting. That's not a card that many of the decks play. Alright, so if we want a chance in this game, we're definitely going to have to rattle off a bunch of lands. But if it doesn't happen real fast here, we're just going to scoop them up. You know they have Loam and Wasteland going. So you're definitely going to have to draw multiple lands in a row. This deck doesn't play a whole lot. I think it's 18 lands if I remember correctly. Holistic Wisdom. That's an interesting one. Alright, we'll scoop it up. They're too far ahead and we're just not coming back from this. We're going to save ourselves a little bit of time here and we're going to go to the next game. Alright, so we bring in Surgical Extractions. Okay, so we don't want Dreadnought. Throne of Guests have to come in because they're going to be playing Chalice of the Void. The other cards we're looking at is we don't want Liliana. These cards might come in, the Hymn, the Diabolic Edict, and the Bitter Blossom. So it's interesting, from what we've seen out of our opponent was playing Gamble like a standard lands deck. But they were also playing Liliana of the Veil. Liliana of the Veil is generally a card that goes in aggro loam, not lands. So our opponent's on a little bit of a brew here. So we're not gonna be able to sideboard like we normally do for these other matchups. Because if it's aggro loam, they play more creatures, where lands does not. So I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna treat this more like a lands matchup. I don't know, this is going to be a tough one to sideboard for. The slam dunk is Surgical Extraction. Outside of that, we don't quite know. Alright, well let's start with what else we would like to cut. I think we're going to bring in the Bitter Blossom. Bitter Blossom and Diabolic Edict are good against both versions of the deck. I think the only card I'm really considering is if I want these thrones. I'm going to cut the Reanimates. I think I'm going to hedge a little bit here and bring in the thrones. We didn't see any chalices, but there's a very reasonable chance that they play them. But the rest of the cards should all be good. Alright, the sand's good. We have Delver, we have Double Street Wraith that we can cycle, we have Surgical if they hit a Loam, and we also have Throne just in case they land a Chalice. I'm going to wait on this Street Wraith. The only thing that can, well, maybe not. I think we'll probably just fire off the 2 Street Wraiths. The only thing that could really change is if we draw a Death Shadow. Alright, now we just get to play Delver. Innocent Blood is annoying. Yeah, I really have no idea what our opponent is trying to do over there. They're on a brew for sure. Alright, so we'll start with the Street Race cycle. This is interesting because now we can just Wasteland and play a Gurmag Angler, which should be hopefully really good. Turn 2 Angler is a nice place to be. Treetop Village, sure. Alright, so we get to play land, now we get the Brainstorm. I'm going to hold off on this Brainstorm, I don't want to cast it yet. We don't really have any, we might end up shuffling back this Angler or this Throne of Geth. Our opponent just played 2 Treetop Villages, so now they must, doesn't look like they have another black source in their hand. So at least next turn, we really don't have to worry about Liliana the Veil unless they play like an Urborg. I guess that's the only way that they can get it. But we'll play Delver here. That'll give us a little protection from that. And we also have the Marsh Flats to do our little upkeep scry action with our Delver. We can always shuffle with the trigger on the stack. Toxic Deluge. I mean, Toxic Deluge is definitely good. We're just kind of debating here. If we want to try to brainstorm, I mean, we can brainstorm and look for a Daze or a Force of Will. But if we miss it, I think we're going to be in definitely some rough shape. Because that'll give us 1, 2, 3, 4 cards. So if we miss, we're going to have 4 cards in the yard to try to recast this Gurmag Angler. But we're also giving up on our shuffle with the Brainstorm. Alright, I think we're going to cast it. It's probably worth it because we have such... Because if we can find the Daze, they're just dead. No Daze, unfortunately. Alright, so Underground Sea is going to go back, and then we'll put Bloodstained Mire so that way we can shuffle away the Underground Sea. Fortunately here, we just get the reload. we get to play Delver and another Gurmag Angler. We're still not really quite sure exactly what our opponent's deck is doing. Innocent Blood and Toxic Deluge make it look more like a Jund deck. So we've seen Innocent Blood, Toxic Deluge, Liliana, and Punishing Fires. That all looks like a Jund deck, but they were playing Light from the Loam as well as Gamble. This is interesting. This could just be a Jund variant. So I think we're going to have to tweak our sideboarding here a little bit. These surgical extractions definitely look worse. Throwing a guess definitely look worse. After what we've seen, I think we do have to change it up here a little bit. It doesn't look like they're playing Chalice of the Void. Bitter Blossom and Diabolic Edict are both still good. Alright, so I'm going to bring the 2 Reanimates back in. If our opponent's playing stuff like Innocent Blood, Reanimate's going to be really good. I don't know if we want Liliana, though. Liliana's great in grindy matchups, but if the opponent's trying to wasteland us out of the game, we might never get to cast it. I think we're going to bring in the Dazes. We'll put the Hymns in. Normally, I'd like to cut the Force of Wills in this kind of matchup, especially if it is Jund, but it's hard to say what our opponent's playing. Like last game, if we had a Force of Will for that Deluge, they were just dead on the spot. So they're playing more spells than what we would expect. This hand is excellent. Alright, so we're going to start on a Watery Grave and play Delver. This allows us to keep up Daze, as well as potentially cast our Hymn to Tarak next turn. Wasteland is fine, if that's just what they want to do. We would not like to reveal a fetch land. So we'll attack. We're going to cycle our Street Wraith just in case we had something like a Thoughtseize. We do not, so we get to pass the turn. Innocent Blood. Sure. Do the same thing, cycle our Street Wraith. Gives us our answer, see what's going on, what we have on the top of our deck. So now we get to, looks like, cast a Gurmag. Because if we fetch, that's got 4, 5, 6. Yeah, we definitely have enough to play Gurmag, or we can just hymn our opponent. I kind of just want to play the Gurmag here. We have Force of Will and Daze Protection, so it's unlikely that they're going to be able to kill our Gurmag. just going to get an underground C here. I don't want to go ham with our life total, especially since they're playing Punishing Fire. Yeah, I think we're just going to slam this Angler. I'm going to keep the Delver in the yard just in case we draw a Reanimate. Yeah, so our opponent's was trying to sit on a bunch of Wastelands this game. They do have a Chalice of the Void. Yeah, it's interesting because I have... I still don't know what our opponent's trying to do over there. So this is just like an aggro loam variant. I don't even know if we care about this Chalice, honestly. I mean, it's good against our deck as a whole. That is true, but it's really bad against our hand. So I think we're just going to let this resolve, and hopefully we can ride this Garmag Angler to victory. Yeah, see, our opponent doesn't even want to Wasteland us. Alright, so we'll cast our Hymn. We get to crash. Liliana the Veil. I'm sorry, my friend, but you cannot have that one. So we can either double daze. We can either double daze or we can just force and pitch daze. I guess it's more likely that we can draw another blue card. If we draw another blue card, Force of Will is going to be active. Versus the other way around, this daze probably isn't going to do anything, so I think we're going to double daze here. It's definitely more likely that we draw the extra blue card, so we keep this Force of Will active. Perfect. Alright, so we just keep pushing in for 5, and we still get to keep our protection up. Another Liliana, okay. Our opponent only has 1 card in hand. So we basically need them to miss 1 draw step here. We have any creature covered with the Diabolic Edict. We're just hoping to fade either another Liliana or an Innocent Blood, because Toxic Deluge is no longer an out for them. So yeah, we just really need to fade the any type of Edict. And they missed. Alright, excellent. Nice little start here, game 1. Nice win against whatever you want to call that brew. I guess to be fair, it was probably closer to Aggro Loam. But aggro alone plays Mox Diamond, which we didn't see a single Mox Diamond in 3 games. And Jund doesn't normally play Chalice, so you can't really call it a Jund deck either. Alright, round 2, here we go. This hand is good. We'll get to cycle 2 Street Race on the first turn. We have Force of Will for if it's a combo deck. Fatal Push. We don't have an action spell. We don't have a creature that we can attack with yet, but we definitely get to see a lot of cards here, so this is a keep. And we are on the play. So right now we can deal ourselves 7 on the first turn if we find a Death Shadow. Our opponent's on a mulligan to 6. Alright, and they keep their 6. Well, there's our Death Shadow. Okay, so we gotta at least get a turn 2 Death Shadow out of this. This hand's going to be great against a combo deck. Windswept Heath is probably not a combo deck. Okay, so it looks like we are going to play a fetch land. This lets us fetch and shock. Cast our Brainstorm. So I think it's Windswept Heath. I think it's pretty safe to assume these Fatal Pushes are going to be good, because it typically means some type of a creature deck. So Watery Grave is going to be our easy card to put back. That's definitely the first one to go. Your second card is a little bit harder. So you want Force of Will and Preordain, and you also want the Daze. Fatal Push. We're assuming Fatal Push is going to be good here. We can put back the other Scalding Tarn and just get rid of the 2 lands and play our Death Shadow. That might be the easiest way to do it. That takes away Revolt for the Fatal Push, which could be relevant if this is like a Knight of the Reliquary deck. But at this point we don't know that. The option is either we put back Scalding Tarn or we put back Fatal Push. I think we're going to put back one of the Fatal Pushes. This allows us to get our fetch and shock, and play our Death Shadow. Turn 2 Death Shadow is pretty good. We even have another fetch land in our hand to make it even bigger next turn. And if this is a Swords to Plowshares deck, we have a way to protect it. Our opponent Force of Will pitching Piracy Charm. Well, I'm not quite sure what to make of that. Piracy Charm is a card that you don't see very often, especially in a main deck. Now, if they think this Death Shadow is good enough to force a will, we're going to have to force back. Maybe this is a Bant deck. So assuming if this is a Bant deck, we're probably going to go Force of Will, pitching Preordain with the Keeper Daze. I think that's what we're going to do. I mean, they still get us if they have a Swords of Plowshares, but I don't think they're going to blow a Force of Will if they have a Swords in their hand. Opponent is playing blue-green. So I think we're going to let this... I would like to daze this library. But I think my worry is if they untap and play like a True Name Nemesis. A True Name Nemesis is just going to brick us cold. So I think unfortunately we're going to have to let them have the Sylvan library. I don't like the idea, but I think we have to try to keep this Death Shadow alive, and if they play a True Name, we're going to be in some serious trouble. Okay, that makes it a little bit easier. Drawing the Force of Will there was excellent. Alright, so we just get to fetch and shock. We get to jump in for 7 here. This is going to make their library a lot worse. They're not going to be able to draw a whole bunch of cards off of it. This could be Infect. Yep. Actually, just as I say that, I didn't even think about it right away, but Piracy Charm, I forgot, was a card that Infect plays occasionally. Alright, so this Ponder... So, if we cast this Ponder, what are we looking for? I'm going to say maybe just another threat or another removal spell. At that rate, we might be better off just keeping this Ponder in our hand. Oops. So if we keep this Ponder in our hand, we get to have Force of Will, pitch Ponder. It also gives us Daze to protect from a pump spell, and then we have Fatal Push on top of it. So I think we're actually going to hold on to this Ponder and not even cast it. So our opponent's got to try to kill us this next turn. Otherwise they're going to have to start throwing speed bumps in front of this Death Shadow. But we have some answers, so I think we're going to be in good shape here. Animate Ink Moth. You got it. You can attack. Alright, so we have no reason to act first. We have to make the Infect player do whatever they want to do first. Invigorate. Do we care about Invigorate? Not really. I mean, they can hit us for 4, which is fine. Or hit us for 5, rather. That's fine. Okay, that one we're not okay with. So now I think we're just going to Fatal Push. If they have a protection spell, we have it covered. Okay, yeah, so they just had to go for it and hope we didn't have any interaction. Alright, so that was a pretty easy game one. So we get to bring in Liliana the Last Hope, which is excellent in this dip matchup. Him to Turak, Bitter Blossom, and Diabolic Edict. So we have a lot of good cards that we can bring in, and Marsh Casualties. So what do we want to take out? I don't know if we have that many cards to take out, unfortunately. We definitely want a lot of the cards that we have in our main deck. The Death Shadow plan is excellent against them. So you have Death Shadow and Delver. Probably going to cut some of our counter magic. So we're going to cut the Force of Wills. We're in a hope that we can just control the board with our creature removal. So I think it looks like we're just going to be cutting some of our counter magic here. Stubborn Denials are probably also going to go. Maybe these Interacts are not good enough. We'll put the Hymns on the board. That's a card that we might bring in on the play. Bringing them in on the draw is definitely a little skeptical, so we'll keep out the Hymns for right now. And we get to trim one more card. I think we'll trim one of these Stubborn Denials. And we'll go with that. Force of Wills definitely have some spots where they're really good if you got to tap out and play a threat, but we loaded up on so much removal that hopefully they're gonna have to slow down their game plan. This hand we don't have any removal, but I think this is a keep. We have the turn 1 Delver, and then we have a Brainstorm and a Wasteland for next turn. I mean, if they have a really fast hand, they might still get us. Thoughtseize. That might be a good enough reason just to jam a Thoughtseize on turn 1. Because if they have the Invigorate Berserk again, we could just die on turn 2. So I think that's what we're going to do. I think we're just going to jam a Thoughtseize here. We can figure out how we want to play our turns going forward. Alright, so at least their hand is not incredibly fast. Let's take a snip. Okay, so they have Brainstorm. Brainstorm might be the card that we take here. Flusterstorm is just a protection spell for them, which is fine. And Piracy Charm kills our Delver. Or they give their guy Island Walk. So that's one thing we do have to keep in mind. I think we're going to take the Brainstorm, because the rest of their hand we can definitely play through. I would assume they're probably just going to attack here and say go unless they drew something relevant. Looks like they did not. Daze is good. Alright, so we're going to lead on our Wasteland. Hit the Tropical Island. They're going to float a blue, which is fine. We can go to our second main phase and then play our Delver. If they want a Piracy Charm, that's fine. We at least have a Daze, so they can't just play it unless they have a second land, or they're just going to run into the Daze, which is fine with me too. Okay, they drew an Inkmoth Nexus. They might just fire off the Piracy Charm here. Yep. That's fine. So we'll hold on to this Daze. We can definitely get more out of it. Next turn, we'll check out, see how this Angler looks. Dismember is a good draw. Alright, so now we know they have a Flusterstorm, and they took down their Flusterstorm, so we're just going to fire off this Dismember now. Player land first, just in case they drew a Daze. And we're going to pass. Okay, so they're just going to animate Nexus and attack. That is fine. We will take our 1 and be happy about it. Alright, so we're just going to start with the Brainstorm here. Let's play our land first, just in case they want to fire off the Flusterstorm. Yeah, that's a really aggressive use of Flusterstorm. So I think what we're going to do here is we're going to probably pay for one of these, and then we'll daze the second copy. Because we do want this Brainstorm to resolve. Pay 1 for Flusterstorm. Yes. And then cast our Daze, targeting their Flusterstorm by bouncing one of these Watery Graves. Okay, now Brainstorm is going to resolve. Alright, so Watery Grave definitely goes back. The other card, it's either going to be Bloodstained Mire or Daze. So let's see what we're going to do here. If we fetch, and we're going to fetch and we're going to Thoughtseize our opponent first. Or if we fetch, we could play a Death Shadow with Daze Protection. That might be better. And then we can Thoughtseize next turn. So I think that's what we're going to do. They didn't have the kill this turn. They didn't even have any pump spell, so I think we can wait a turn on this Thoughtseize. Yeah, so we're going to get to take the turn to get the Death Shadow into play, hopefully. Alright, so we have a little bit of interaction here. We get to have a Daze just in case they have a big pump spell. Brainstorm is fine. I think we would just want to see them play a creature here. I mean, we still could in theory die here, because if they go Animate Nexus, Invigorate, Blighted Agent is not the end of the world. Okay, Blighted Agent is fine. So I think presumably they're going to fetch here. So we'll Thoughtseize, we'll see if they kept a good card in their hand. Berserk, okay. So this allows us to attack with our Death Shadow and play another Death Shadow. And they're shuffling, so they're going to make a blind draw here. Like I said, they could have drawn something like a Become Immense that definitely kills us there, but they don't have a whole lot of outs to deal us 7 infect that turn. So that's alright. That's another excellent game. We are up 2-0. First round, we had a win against whatever that lands Jund deck was, and second round, we got a win against Infect. So definitely a nice showing so far for Death Shadow. The deck is sweet. Definitely has a lot of good matchups. I mean, we'll see how Miracles and the other Swords to Plowshare decks are. Those are going to be your weaknesses, but you're pretty great against the rest of the field. Alright, opponents, let's go. This is something that's, if you're somebody that's just getting into Legacy, I mean, this is, if you're used to playing Modern, I mean, you're going to own a lot of these cards just from Modern, with the exception of, I mean, you only need 2 Underground Seas. 2 Underground Seas to build a Legacy deck is actually pretty cheap compared to what a lot of the other ones are. Your mana base is nice and cheap, so you got to go out buy 2 Underground Seas and a set of Force of Wills. The rest of this deck is actually pretty cheap, with the exception of that. The rest of this is all pretty much chaff. If you play, like I said, if you play Modern, you're going to own a lot of these cards anyway. Your sideboard can definitely be tweaked. If you don't own like Liliana the Last Hope, you can play some other cards. I mean, they're a little expensive. I don't know, they're like 30 or 40 bucks now, something like that. Surgical Extraction has been an expensive card for a while now, especially online. This card's like 50 tickets online right now. Hence the reason why I have the cheap foil promo versions. This is just the cheapest version you can buy online, so it's something you can snag at a bit of a discount if you don't mind taking the foils. Alright, so we are going to be on the draw. This hand's a keep. We don't have a Force of Will, but the rest of the hand is excellent. Forest, Utopia Sprawl. Then my assumption would be that this is Enchantress. Alright, so I think we're just going to fire off a Thoughtseize here. Okay, so good news is the rest of our opponent's hand is pretty bad. So if we take this Enchantress Presence, they're just going to play an Abundant Growth next turn, and that's it. Unless they draw something relevant, that's all they're going to be doing. At this point, we can't answer the Enchantress Presence, so I think what we're going to have to do is take it here and hope that they whiff. One of the things about this Enchantress deck is if they get their engine rolling, that's how they beat you. This little Abundant Growth isn't going to kill us, but the Enchantress's Presence definitely can. Alright, so we can lead on a Ponder. We're obviously looking for another land here. If we lead on the Ponder, and if we miss on the lands, at least we can shuffle. Versus Brainstorm definitely has the highest upside if we find a fetch land. But if we whiff on a land, we're going to start to fall behind. I mean, for that sense, we could also lead on Preordain. Preordain lets us see 2 cards. If there are no lands, we get the draw. So let us see 3 cards instead. I think I'll lead on the Preordain here. Yeah, so these are both not what we want, so we get to go bottom. Bottom. We found a land, but it is not the land that we want. So we just get to go, say, Wasteland and pass the turn. that's a good one. Our opponent found an enchantress. But they didn't have anything to cast with it, which is a good sign for us, at least. Alright, so we're basically in the same decision tree point as last turn. Do we want to go with Brainstorm, or do we want to go with the Ponder? I think it's going to be the Ponder. Man, where are our lands? Okay. We have a chance. We found our fetch land. Now we just get to fetch, shock, play our Death Shadow. Now we get to go to town next turn. So if our opponent gets to whiff and miss a turn here, hopefully we should be in really good shape. Like I said, last turn they had the extra mana and they didn't cast any enchantments, so their hand could have actually been empty from last turn. They had a couple of lands. Eidolon of Blossoms is a good one. So that lets them draw 2 cards. This is the problem with this matchup just as a whole, because now they just get to snowball and draw a million cards. So you really have to keep them off of their enablers and let them draw cards. Okay. So how do we want to go about this? So we get the fetch and shock with the Verdant Catacombs. We get to make our Death Shadow nice and big. But at this point it can't attack. So getting the Death Shadow big is not a priority. We can also dismember this Eidolon, which I guess I actually should have done last turn, which I kind of blanked on it for a second. Yeah, we definitely should have dismembered last turn. That was my bad. I think I kind of just a mental brain fart. I forgot about the Wasteland using for mana, so that was my bad. Alright, so I think we're going to start with that. We'll dismember this Eidolon. I think we're going to Thoughtseize and play a Delver. I don't really want to take down this Stubborn Denial. Solitary Confinement is the one that gives them Shroud and prevents all damage, so that's going to be the card that we have to take. Now they just have a couple of Wild Growths. These Wild Growths aren't doing anything other than drawing them an extra card. Okay, so we get to play Delver. Okay, now Death Shadow does not get to attack as long as this Elephant Grass is in play. So we're going to have to try to ride this Delver to victory. Alright, so our opponent's just going to spew off a couple Wild Growths here. We're just going to have to let them do it. They get the cycle, they get to draw a couple cards. Green Sun for 2. That's pretty good, because that just lets them get another Enchantress. And now all of their enchantments are going to let them draw 2 cards. So I think we're going to counter this. Probably just going to fire off another Wild Growth here. Well, they drew the Enchantress anyway, so that we weren't stopping that. Delver trigger. Oh man. All right. Well, I don't normally like spewing off a brainstorm here, so we're not going to do it. We'll see if we can blind flip this Delver. Okay. So we find a brainstorm, which is nice. Reveal our brainstorm. Now we have to pay 2. Yes, we got to pay 2 for this Delver, just to let him attack. So we'll cast our brainstorm. These cards are not particularly relevant. I mean, we're going to end up using this Ponder probably to shuffle. So what do we not want? Dismember is not great. The only thing Dismember actually kills is the Eidolons, which they don't have an Eidolon, so we're not super worried about this Dismember. We could probably shuffle one of these Brainstorms. We don't have a shuffle effect anyway, so it's not going to be great. Well, that's actually pretty nice. Our third card down was a Delver. Alright, so we'll put Dismember back. Put Brainstorm back. Draw Delver. No shuffle. Attack with our Insectile Aberration. Pay 2. Yes, we get to attack. And the next turn we get to play Delver, and we get to flip our Delver the following turn, and we start attacking with 2 flyers. So we really need our opponent to brick off here a little bit if we want to have a chance. But they definitely have some time. I mean, if they ever find another Elephant Grass, yeah, that's right there it is. If they find the Elephant Grass, we're probably not winning this game, because they just get to keep these Elephant Grasses in play for forever. Another Enchantress. This is exactly what I was talking about, how these effects all just snowball and you fall super far behind. This is the point of the game where we might just be getting out of reach. Let's see what they Living Wish for. Doomwake Giant. That's pretty good. So Doomwake Giant makes me not even want to play this Delver. Okay. Well, we'll attack with our Delver. Pay her 2. Oh no, we can't even attack. Okay, never mind, I forgot about that. Forgot Elephant Grass was 4, not 2. Because if they play Doomwake Giant and they get to cast another enchantment, they get to just kill our Delver here. So I remember the card correctly. I believe it comes into play, gives your guy -1/-1, and then if they cast another enchantment, then it's going to give everybody -2/-2. So assuming they have another enchantment here, we're going to scoop them up. Yep, good enough. Okay, so they just get the Wrather board. We're never coming back from that. Okay, so what do we want to do here? Hymn to Turax can come in. Marsh Casualties can come in. That at least gives us an answer to potentially kill their creatures, because none of our targeted removal is going to do anything. Dismembers come out. Fatal Pushes come out. Diabolic Edict also comes in. So the rest of these cards here, Surgical, no. Dreaded Knight, no. Dismember, Fatal Push are also no's. Throne of Geth is a no. I don't think that's going to be it the way it looks. Liliana's not going to do enough. Bitter Blossom is it's an card. It's not really meant for this kind of matchup. So I think Bitter Blossom's going to stay on the bench. And the fact that they can just do Doomwake Giant and wipe our board is pretty bad. So looks like this is going to be it. We're going to go to game 2. We definitely have a lot of tools to beat this matchup. Like I said, our opponent kept a pretty poor hand and they drew out of it, so I think we were a little unlucky that game, but we were on the play this time. This hand is significantly better. So you get to go turn 1 Delver with Force and Daze. I'm going to wait till next turn to cycle the Street Wraith. There's nothing that we're going to draw this turn, because even if we draw like a Thoughtseize, we're not casting it over a Delver. So we're just going to wait a turn to cycle the Street Wraith. Wild Growth. Do we care? Yeah, I'm actually going to Daze the Wild Growth here. This lets us get another shock out of our Watery Grave. And we get to slow him down a little bit. No flip, unfortunately. Now we will cycle our Street Wraith. We can shock with the Watery Grave. So it's interesting if we want to cast this Brainstorm, if we want to hold on to it. If we cast the Brainstorm, we could potentially set up our Delver flip for next turn. But we're definitely not getting the most out of our Brainstorm. Normally you like to do it main phase when you haven't played a land. We've already played our land this turn, so... But flipping this Delver could actually be pretty important in trying to win this game. So I think we are going to cast it. Not having the ability to shuffle is a little not what we're looking for, but... So now we get to keep a Force of Will and Delver, and we get to play Death Shadow next turn, because we need to go Thoughtseize, Death Shadow. So ideally we don't want to Daze. So Wasteland can go back. And then the Thoughtseize will be on top, so we're going to reveal the Thoughtseize next turn. Yeah, so our next turn is going to be nice. We get to reveal to our Delver. We get to reveal a Thoughtseize to our Delver, so we get to flip it, play C, Thoughtseize our opponent, and play Death Shadow. Abundant Growth, yes, that's fine. Yes, I would like to reveal this Thoughtseize. I would like to cast said Thoughtseize, target you. Alright, so our opponent has a bunch of hate in their hand. But fortunately for us, it's not actually doing a whole heck of a lot. So I think what we're going to do is we're just going to take an Elephant Grass, take an elephant grass, we can force the other elephant grass, and if they cast choke, it's not the end of the world. Because we already have 2 creatures on board. The choke's good if the board is cleared, but with us having a Delver and a Death Shadow in play, the choke's not going to be nearly as impressive. Yeah, like, that's totally fine. I mean, we can daze the choke. If we daze the choke, we know that they're going to resolve an Elephant Grass next turn, which the Elephant Grass is actually worse for us. So we're going to let the choke resolve. We get to hit our opponent for 4. I mean, sure, they get to keep us off of casting a Death Shadow. Enchantress Presence. Yeah, unfortunately we're going to have to let them have that. Like I said, we need to save this. We need to save the force for the Elephant Grass. Yep. Utopia Sprawl, sure. Alright, we're just going to fire off this Wasteland on the Sanctum. That's your main target in the matchup. You're not really saving it for anything else. Alright, we just get to attack here. Hit them for 5. Well, they get the turn, they get to untap, they get to do whatever they want to do over there. But up to this point, we've done as much as we can do in this game. Vanishing Light's a good one. Probably taking out Delver. They could take out Death Shadow, because if we rip a fetch land, they're just dead to the Death Shadow. Because we can fetch and shock and play Thoughtseize. So they might take out the Death Shadow. Yeah, that's what they're going to do. Living Wish, they can get a Doomwake Giant. Unless they have some... I mean, they could also get like another Oblivion Ring or something like that. Yeah, Doomwake Giant. So we would like to draw a land here, please. That is not a land. So let's see, how much mana do they have? They have 1, they have 5, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, this Doomwake Giant could just kill us if they have a follow-up play. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Alright, well, I felt like we were super far ahead with the way that game started out, but our opponent drew out of it, so... This Marsh Flats is a little late. Yeah, they got it. Okay. That was a little bit of a disappointing loss, but we'll go to the next round here. We're currently 2-1. We are not doing bad, but the first round we had a win against Jund Lands, we had a win round 2 against Infect, and then round 3 we had a loss against Enchantress. Looking back, I mean, going back and looking at it, I think our decision was definitely right to take the elephant grass and force the other elephant grass. But we did lose to the choke, but we also weren't beating the two elephant grasses. So it's like you have to kind of pick your poison and hope you can win through one of them. And the choke was the one that we were going to try to win through, and it just didn't work out. All right, round 4. Here we go. This hand is unfortunately a mulligan. We are going to be on the play this game. Alright, so we got a mulligan here. This hand is fine, I guess. Hand's fine. I mean, you're relying pretty hard on the street race to find you some action, but we get the bottom, the stubborn denial. So at least we know we're not drawing that blank. So we get to cycle. Cycle again. And play a land and say go. Island Ponder, this could be any number of decks. This could be Miracles, this could be Grixis, this could be a combo deck. You don't see a whole lot of basic islands. Alright, Watery Grave. We'll play Watery Grave untapped, and we'll play this Delver. I think we want to see a combo deck here. We're gonna have a hard time beating a control deck with this hand. This might be Sneak and Show, Punishing Fire, Blue-Red Punishing Fire, huh? Okay. Delver's gonna die. That's definitely not worth the Force of Will. This could be that the Teamer Rogue deck that plays Dak Faden. It's like a 4-color Dak Faden discard Punishing Fire Grove deck. It's kind of sweet. The mana base is a little wonky. It's a little weak to Wasteland, but alright, so we'll start with the Brainstorm. So if that's what we're going to put our opponent on, so Punishing Fire likely means the Teamer deck. So we definitely want Reanimate, we definitely want Thoughtseize. So this will allow us to play a land, Thoughtseize our opponent, cast Reanimate. Probably going to shuffle away one of these Force of Wills. Shuffle away a Force of Will. It might even be both Force of Wills. It's either 2 Force of Wills or it's going to be Force of Will and Dismember. I think it's going to be the 2 Force of Wills. Force is generally not very good in these fair matchups. So I'm actually going to take an Underground Sea here. Especially because if we're going to reanimate a Street Wraith and cast this Dismember, you can't take too much damage. Oops. So we're going to start with the Thoughtseize. Yeah, this is exactly it. Alright, so it's like a 4-color Dak Faden deck. Alright, so I think we're going to take the Force of Will here, so that way we could reanimate the Street Wraith and get going. We're going to leave him with the pile of cantrips. Ah, that was a good rip. Our opponent just peeled the Baleful Strix off the top. Alright. So this is interesting. We can dismember their Baleful Strix. So right now, if we cast Dismember, at this point they don't have a Grove to buy back their Punishing Fire, which is worth something. But they do have a bunch of cantrips in their hand, so if they find it, the Baleful Strix is going to be not great. So if we go Dismember for 2, we'll go down to 3. Then we can fetch with the Polluted Delta. Yeah, that's going to be super risky to do that. We want to make sure we don't want to just die to a Punishing Fire if they find a Punishing Fire off the top. That's going to be the most ridiculous way to lose, which unfortunately that might be the way this game goes. So I don't know how much we're going to be able to prevent that. If they peel a Punishing Fire or a Lightning Bolt, we could just be dead. So this Thoughtseize is not great. This Dismember is also not great. So I think we're just going to have to ignore the fact and hope they don't draw a burn spell. Alright, so we're going to put back Marsh Flats and we're going to put back Thoughtseize. Alright, so Street Wraith gets to walk in because Underground Sea is a swamp. This guy has Swamp Walk. And then we'll pass the Brainstorm, sure. Ponder, sure. I think they're digging for the Grove right now. Because if they find the Grove, this Punishing Fire is probably just going to kill us. Another Baleful Strix. Okay. Paramag is a good one. Alright, so they get the Nuggets for 1. Fetch a tap land. Untap. Well, Death Shadow was an interesting draw. So I was just going to snap off this Dismember on the Gurmag Angler, but now we don't need to do that. So let's see, if we attack with Street Wraith, to go down to 12, this Death Shadow will be lethal next turn, because we're going to go to, it's going to be a 10-10 Death Shadow. So this Dismember is probably going to get saved to kill one of these Baleful Strix. We could also cast Reanimate. We could reanimate Delver? Reanimating Delver is not terrible. No, we actually can't do that. Otherwise, we're just dead to the Baleful Strixes. Okay, so we're going to play Death Shadow here, and that's all we can do. Alright, so we get to walk in with the Street Wraith. I'm going to hold on to this Dismember right now. Okay, well they didn't find a Grove. They did find a Punishing Fire though. Alright, well, we're dead. Yeah, like I said, I think we kind of had to play that game with the hopes that they didn't find another burn spell, but they found it, so we were just too low to really be able to play around a burn spell there. Okay, so we get our first grindy matchup. So we get to bring in Liliana the Last Hope. Get to bring in the Hymn to Terex, Bitter Blossom. I don't know if we're bringing in this Diabolic Edict. That one might not come in. And we might want a couple Surgicals because of Punishing Fire. Alright, so Force of Wills are going to come out. These 5 are definitely slam dunks. Those are definitely coming in. We might just cut the Fatal Pushes. I mean, Fatal Push is not going to be great here. You can Fatal Push a Baleful Strix, but that's not getting you very far. Dismember at least kills Gurmag Angler, which is could be an important card to deal with. I guess Stubborn Denial is also another card that could potentially come out. So if I remember correctly, I think their main way of killing you is Gurmag Angler is exactly what we've seen in that first game. It's going to be Gurmag Angler, Baleful Strix, and Punishing Fire. So if that's going to be the case, we don't want Marsh Casualties. I think these Stubborn Denials can come out. But then again, they also play a lot of Planeswalkers, so they still might be good. Alright, we're going to bring in 2 Surgicals. We don't want to go super heavy on the Surgicals because if Punishing Fire is the main thing that we're taking out, it's not like it's their whole game plan. It's different if you're playing against Reanimator. Reanimator, you definitely want as many Surgicals as possible. These type of decks, you don't always want it. Alright, so this hand is a keep. We get to put ourselves at 15 on the first turn with this Thoughtseize. This is one of the downsides to playing multiple Dismembers in your deck. A lot of times you only want 1 Dismember, you don't want 2, but it's a little awkward when you draw 2 of them. Alright, here we're going to take the Inquisition. Baleful Strix is whatever, Punishing Fire is whatever. We can at least dismember the Baleful Strix. I mean, it gets a cycle for another card. We just don't want them to Inquisition us and take our Death Shadow. Bitter Blossom is an excellent draw. I'm actually just going to play the Bitter Blossom here. So we actually need to be very careful here with these dismembers. So let's see, if we dismember this Baleful Strix, we can take 2 and go to 10. That way it keeps our Death Shadow out of Punishing Fire range. That might be the best way to do it. I don't think we want to take the full 4 off of the Dismember. If we take the 4 off of the Dismember, we're going to go to 8. On our upkeep, we'll go to 7. Maybe that's fine. Because they had no answer to the Death Shadow yet. And his Punishing Fire is pretty far away from killing us. Or alternatively, we can play Ponder, see what's going on with Ponder first. We don't really need anything off of this Ponder though, so I think we're going to wait for save the Ponder for next turn. It's just a matter of if we want to take 2 or 4 off of this Dismember. Yeah, because if we... Oops. Excuse this window here, folks. This is our constant Windows reminder that we need to update our Windows. It obviously always comes up when we're recording, so let's excuse that. Let's keep going with our game. Yeah, I think we're just going to pay 2 with this Death Shadow. Be the pass turn. Alright, so now we have to be wary of Punishing Fire Grove. Because now that they drew the Grove, we're going to get punished here. What is that? Destroy target multi... Okay, Sultai Charm. I don't think I've ever seen that one in Legacy. Alright, so we might actually have to dismember one of our own tokens here, which is going to be really obnoxious. Because we know they have the Punishing Fire in hand. Alright, well that's at least a good set of cards. I kind of want multiples of these, so we might actually be casting the Brainstorm here. I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to put these back, put back Verdant, because we want all 3 of these cards. Cast our Brainstorm. Put back Underground Sea, Dismember. So we get to play Verdant. Play Delver. So I think this is actually mildly interesting if we want a surgical extraction that Baleful Strix is. I think there's definitely a reasonable argument to do that, but I think we're going to wait. Because I don't know if they can answer this Death Shadow without a Baleful Strix, and they obviously draw one. So I think we get punished for not doing it. That was definitely, I think, a strong consideration there to surgical the Strixes. Alright, so they're going to fetch. Presumably fire us here. Sure. Alright, so they have Dak Faden Ponder. So Dak Faden is just going to be a draw 2, discard 2. So Dak Faden's not going to be great. So I think we're just going to actually take the Ponder here. So let's attack. They're going to block our Death Shadow. And then we'll cast the Surgical on the Punishing Fires. They actually boarded out some Punishing Fires, which is interesting. Alright, so let's take a look at the rest of their deck here. Alright, so we know their hand is Dak Faden Polluted Delta. They have a pile of one-ofs. So they have 1 Abrupt Decay, 1 Engineered Explosives, 1 Fatal Push, 1 Gurmag Angler, 1 Kolaghan's Command, 1 Liliana, 1 Deed. Yeah, our opponent is playing an ambitious deck for sure. Okay. Let's see what they draw. Wow, what a rip. That was something. Alright, well, those two last matches were a little bit rough. A little bit. Alright, we are on the play, and we have an excellent hand, so we will be keeping this one. This is a hand where we get to turn 1, fetch and shock, and cast a Thoughtseize. So we can start the game at 15. Let's see what our opponent is up to. Alright, so this is Miracles. Alright, this is a, this might be a tough matchup. Alright, so Swords to Plowshares is tremendous. That's probably the card we have to take here. They also have Wasteland Protection, they have Flooded Strand and Island, so might be in a little bit of trouble here with this pairing. We're going to fire off a Brainstorm. We definitely need a little bit of help here. Alright, so Fatal Push is not going to be good. That's the easy shuffle. Our second option, it's either going to be Watery Grave or Reanimate. I think it might just be the Reanimate here. So they have a Force of Will. They can always Force of Will one of our guys, and then we can reanimate it back, which is something. Alright, actually I think we'll put the Watery Grave back. This lets us play Bloodstained Mire, and we get to keep up Stubborn Denial if they just try to jam that counterbalance. Okay, they want to Ponder. That's fine. So one of your big things you want to be careful about here is if you don't want to expose two Death Shadows in play, especially if because they're gonna end up killing two Death Shadows with one Swords to Plowshares. That's one of your biggest concerns with this matchup. Alright, I think we're just going to jam one of these Death Shadows. So we get the shock. We know we're playing a 4/4 Death Shadow. So now we can also ponder. If we ponder here, yeah, if we ponder here, we can look for something like, we can just look for, we're really looking for another counter spell to try and just protect ourselves. We have a Stubborn Denial. I mean, I think odds are here they might force this Death Shadow unless they found another Swords of Plowshares. Alright, so let's cast Ponder first. Looks like our opponent's doing his little ... lag test over there in the chat. So I don't know, maybe he's lagging over there. I know we took a minute there to talk about what we were doing, but I don't think we definitely weren't taking that long. Our opponent disconnected, so maybe he's having trouble on his end. So, like I said, what are we looking for here? This Ponder, I think we're just looking for some extra counter magic to help force these Death Shadows through. It's actually not terrible, because if they want to blow a Force of Will on one of these Death Shadows, we just get to play a Reanimate and bring them back, which I think is probably our best case scenario. We want Stubborn Denial. Stubborn Denial gives us protection from Council's Judgment that we know they have in their hand, as well as if they draw another Swords to Plowshares. So we definitely have some resiliency in our hand here. We're just kind of hanging out, waiting for our opponent to come back. But while we're doing that, let's pull up our legacy metagame here. So not a whole lot has really changed. I mean, we're still looking at, as far as the leagues are concerned, Grixis Control is still the most popular deck, followed by Death Shadow, Lands, Grixis Delver. So these four are still pretty much atop the metagame. Miracles fell out of favor a little bit, but Miracles had a good showing at Grand Prix Richmond last weekend. So you had Andrew Cuneo, who won, plus you had Brad Bonin, who finished third. There's definitely a lot of white decks here in this top 8. I mean, you're looking at Miracles, Stoneblade. Like, there's definitely a lot of Swords to Plowshares decks right now, which could be a problem for this deck going forward. Maybe that's one of the reasons why people are adjusting to it. Ponder here is... this Ponder is interesting. So if you keep this Ponder, you get the option to make your Death Shadows huge, and you get the Brainstorm and the Fetch land. But at this point, we're not really trying to shuffle anything away. This might be good enough to keep. Probably draw the Brainstorm. Yeah, I think that's fine. Yeah, so we'll go back land, Street Wraith, Brainstorm. This order is not super particularly relevant. I mean, like I said, we'd like to see another counterspell, but I don't think it's worth throwing that Ponder back. This allows us to play a Death Shadow. Let's see how our opponent wants to deal with this. Okay, so they're going to go with the Force of Will, which is fine. So if they go with Force of Will, now we just get to reanimate our Death Shadow. I guess alternatively, we could not cast the reanimate this turn. If we don't cast the reanimate this turn... No, I think we're going to play it, because if we play the reanimate, they just get to untap and they get to play a Council's Judgment if they find the land, which I think we're okay with, because we have another Death Shadow in our hand anyway. That'll leave us next turn. We get to play Death Shadow and leave up Stubborn Denial. They're not fetching with this Flooded Strand, which means they could be missing the land. Yeah, they don't have double white for this Council's Judgment. Counterbalance, sure. Alright, so we get to cycle Street Wraith. We know we have a fetch land on top. Now we get to attack with Death Shadow. I don't know if we want to commit another Death Shadow to the board here. So if they play no, actually no, we definitely do, because if they rip the white source, they get to cast Terminus. We can counter Terminus, or they can Council Judgment one of them. So yeah, we're gonna play the Death Shadow here. The fact that we have the Stubborn Denial makes it a little bit easier. They also don't know the top. Maybe they do know the top card of their deck with the Ponder, especially that they're fetching here with the Flooded Strand. I wasn't keeping track of how far they were into that Ponder. Man, what a lucky guy. Opponent gets the blind flip. So they revealed a Brainstorm to counter. Counterbalance, I think, is one of the most tilting cards to play against, especially without Sensei's Divining Top. They just get to blind flip with Counterbalance, and it's just their lucky day. Council's Judgment. All right, so we can we can potentially test the water here and cast Brainstorm first, or we can just cast a Stubborn Denial. I think we're just going to cast a Stubborn Denial. I'd rather have that get countered than the Brainstorm, because we might need this Brainstorm to reload. Gross. Alright, so this Brainstorm means we are going to Brainstorm. If we find a Daze here, hopefully we can keep them off the blind flip. Okay, so we know they have a counterbalance on top of their deck currently. Oh, perfect, and we found our Daze. Oh, no, that doesn't work, because now they have the counterbalance. Well, that works out perfectly for them. Yeah, that's pretty gross how good that's going to work out for them. Because now we can't Daze. Daze was our out here, and now we're going to lose it. So we're going to get hosed by double blind flip. And unfortunately, I don't think we have any way around it. I guess our option is to hope that they stack their deck wrong. So we can put back Force of Will, draw the Ponder. They're going to Brainstorm. If they find a 1, they're going to put a 1 back to cast a Stubborn Denial, and then hopefully this Daze can get through to get this Council's Judgment. So we have a chance here. I guess it depends on what they find off of this Brainstorm. Okay, so they have Portent on top. Now we get the Daze. Now is where they Force a Will us and we want to cry. Ooh, they missed it. Alright. That was actually a pretty sweet little stack there. I thought we were going to end up losing to that second blind flip, but fortunately the Daze got it. Yeah, I definitely thought that was not going to work out the way we wanted it to. Alright, so Miracles. We want our grindy cards, so we want Liliana of Last Hope. We want Bitter Blossom. We want Hymn to Turak. We do not want Marsh Casualties. We do not want Diabolic Edict. Dread of Night is actually going to be an interesting one. We might bring in Dread of Night. There's a good chance that our opponent goes to a Monastery Mentor plan. If they go to Monastery Mentor, at least Dread of Night kills all of the monk tokens. Let's see, Force of Wills are going to come out. So we basically have space for 3 more cards. We definitely want our Stubborn Denials. Dazes are fine. Dazes are definitely a little bit worse on the draw, but they're still fine. We might trim 1 or 2 of them. The Reanimates might come out as well. I mean, it worked out for us last game, but I think there's a lot of games where they're just going to plow our guys, and the Reanimates are not going to be good. Gurmag Angler is also not great against Swords to Plowshares. Unfortunately, they just have a ton of cards that are good in this matchup. I mean, Surgical's not... This is not what the matchup that Surgical is meant for, but if you get the Surgical or Swords to Plowshares, it could definitely make the game a lot easier. So we're going to bring in 2 Surgicals, 2 Dreadonites, and 1 more card here. I think we'll bring in the other Surgical. Just because we know how bad Swords to Plowshares is for us, we really need to find a way to deal with it. I think this hand's going to have to be a mulligan. Our opponent's on 6. We have no pressure in our opening hand. We have 2 counter spells, and we have a Dread of Night just in case they're on the Monastery Mentor plan. But this hand just doesn't actually do anything, so this is going to be a mulligan. This hand is better. And our opponent is going to 5. Street Wraith, we will keep the Street Wraith on top. Opponent gets the Island Ponder, that is fine with me. Alright, so we get to start with a Street Wraith cycle. That's fine, another land is okay with us. Fetch and shock. Go to 15, ponder. These are all good cards. So let's see, what's our next turn going to be? We really don't want to cast Daze. So I think Daze is going to be the card on the bottom. Well, that might not be true. So the best card here is the Liliana. We definitely want the Liliana. We also want the land. So if this next turn, let's say hypothetically they go counterbalance, do we Daze the counterbalance? Or do we just let it go? I think these are all fine. I think we're going to keep this. Alright, so let's go land, Liliana, Daze. Like I said, we're going to want to draw all of these cards. We definitely have time. If our opponent is just... What did they do with that first ponder? They shuffled off of their first ponder, so they could be looking for lands. I don't think I want to Daze here, though. Okay, they found a volcanic island. They're going to portent themselves. Yeah, these things are all fine. If they're using their cantrips to hit land drops, you're totally okay with that. Alright, so we know we have a land on top of our deck. Let's cast our ponder. So we can take a land and play a Death Shadow this turn. No, that's not true. We cannot do that. So that's fine. We'll just keep our hand the way it is. And then next turn we can play either Liliana or Death Shadow. So what would we like to lead with? If we lead with Death Shadow, and if they have a Swords to Plowshares, we can just get the Swords to Plowshares out of their hand. I think we're going to lead with the Liliana here, though. If they have a counter spell, they have a counter spell. They're gonna eventually get the counter spell or Liliana, regardless. So I think that's where we want to start. I mean, if they'd rather fight over the Liliana, I'm okay with that. Portent target themselves. That is perfectly okay. Okay, so they're going to mill an island. They get to draw 2. Liliana, what do you say about that one? You would like to cast a Brainstorm. So you're telling me they do not have an answer for Liliana right now. And like this Brainstorm is perfectly fine. We just don't care about this Brainstorm. I'm not going to blow a daze on it. I mean, they're looking for a Force of Will, presumably. And if they find a Force of Will, we just get to daze it. Sure. So we're going to -2 this Liliana. At the very least, we get the Street Wraith back. So we get a free cycle. And pass turn. So we get our own nice little card advantage engine here. They are going to predict again, sure. I mean, they can draw all the cards in the world that they want. We both have full hands. Let's start with cycling a Street Wraith, see what we find. Another Street Wraith. Okay, let's go to 5. Bitter Blossom is a good one. Bitter Blossom is a very good one. So if they have a counter spell, we would rather them... Well, that could be incorrect. Let's play our Death Shadow first. Because now if they get to plow our Death Shadow, we're free to have some life total to play with. Counterspell on Death Shadow, that is fine. Now we can play our other Death Shadow. Plus our Liliana. And say go. So yeah, even if they get the Plow or Death Shadow here, it's not the end of the world. Sure. Ponder, sure. Okay, so we're going to draw, take a turn here, and see what we got going on. Thoughtseize is a good one, because now we get to see their hand first. So if they have something like a Force of Will, we get to take the Force of Will out of their hand. Another counter spell. I don't think that's worth a double daze. I mean, I think that's close. Like, if you double daze this Force of Will, so you get to bounce a land, bounce 2 lands, you get to replay one of your lands, then you can still... This might actually be worth the double daze. because Daze is getting to the point of the game where it's going to be tough to leverage it. It makes them blow their fetch land. Okay, so presumably they're paying for Daze here. I'm going to float a black, and then we get the Daze again. Now we didn't have a land drop for this turn, so this also gives us a land drop for the turn. Thoughtseize our opponent. We get to see Snapcaster. Snapcaster and 2 cantrips. So if we just take the Snapcaster, I think that's going to be what we do. I think we're just going to take the Snapcaster here, and we still can surgical the swords just in case they find one. But then again, swords really isn't all that relevant right now. If we're going to be on the Bitter Blossom plan, I don't think we care about the swords anymore. So maybe we just take the Brainstorm. I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, so play Bitter Blossom. Plus Liliana, and we get to play a tap land. We could also surgical their Predict. Or I'm sorry, that's a Portent. They have a Portent left in their hand. It's not terrible. That's fine. We'll let them draw. Back to basics was a good rip on their part, which is fine. I mean, we're not dead to the back to basics. We have a Bitter Blossom in play. So with that being their draw, I think we're just going to play this Death Shadow now. Because now we really need to try and end this game quickly. Alright, so we get all their swords to plowshares. And now we just get to play a big Death Shadow. So we know they have a Portent, and we know they have a Snapcaster Mage. They shuffled off of the Portent. Okay, so we just get to attack with our Death Shadow and our Fairy. One thing just to be mindful of is that we just don't lose to an end of turn Snapcaster Mage. They might just be using Snapcaster to chump here. Sure. They just have a pile of cantrips in their graveyard. So they're digging. They're going to be trying to dig for a terminus. Okay. Plus our Liliana, no target, and pass the turn. They did find it. Alright, so that terminus is going to be really hard for us to beat now. Especially with this Bitter Blossom in play. I don't know. We need to draw another Death Shadow. Yeah, because we don't have a Death Shadow in the yard. Turak is not good here. Alright, so our graveyard is currently only 2 Street Wraiths. So we can either flip this Liliana, we get -2 and hope we hit a Death Shadow. We can also brainstorm and hope we find another Death Shadow. Those are our 2 options. If we brainstorm first, at least with no mana, so we're going to have to -2 this Liliana first. We did not hit it, so we get back a Street Wraith. Alright, so we get to sacrifice our Misty Rainforest. Go get our... That's our last Underground Sea, apparently. Yeah, because one of our Underground Seas is in the yard, so I think we're actually just going to be dead here. Yeah, because our only other out is, like, we had to brainstorm into a land and a Death Shadow there to hit it, but now we're out of lands, so we'll have to go to game 3, unfortunately. I didn't think that Back to Basics was going to be that relevant, but it actually ended up being more so than what I thought it would be. So does that make us want to bring back our Force of Wills in here at all? We didn't see a Monastery Mentor. So maybe we bring back in the Force of Wills over the Dreaded Knights. I think that's fine. I mean, your other option is Reanimates. Like I said, Reanimate's not great in this matchup. So I think we'll bring in those 2. So bring in 2 Force of Wills. I guess the other question is if we want all 3 Surgicals. At least I know 3 Surgicals is a lot. I think we're going to keep it at 3 though. Okay, this hand's pretty good. This is the first time we get to have the Delver in an opening hand in this matchup here. Our opponent's been fetching up. For our opponent having Back to Basics in their deck, that last game they fetched a lot of non-basics because of the way their mana turned out. So if their mana is awkward again, we might be able to get them with this Wasteland. no flip. Cycle a Street Wraith. Play our land. And attack for 1 with this Delver. So we can Brainstorm, and then we can fetch and shock down to 12. So we can put a Death Shadow into play. Not super worried about the Stubborn Denial. The worst that they're going to do is fire off a Terminus Flusterstorm. That's fine. I mean, if that's what they want to do, I think I'm just going to throw this Death Shadow into play. Delver trigger. We do not get to cycle, or no flip here. Now we get to cycle our Street Wraith. Another Death Shadow. I'm going to cast a Brainstorm. Definitely don't need 2 Wastelands. So we'll put the 2 Wastelands back. Shock with our Watery Grave. Now we get to attack, and we have Stubborn Denial up. We're only attacking with Death Shadow here, just in case they want to fly it, throw in a Snapcaster Mage to block. We don't want to just throw our Delver away to a Snapcaster Mage. Swords is going to get Stubborn Denial. They have another Flusterstorm. Alright, so this one we do not get to pay for. And we have to pass a turn. We'd like our Delver to flip at some point, but we know we don't have it, so we get the Wasteland again. Put a second main phase. Play Liliana. They have another Swords of Plowshares, so their hand was excellent. We're just going to go upstairs with Liliana, pass a turn. I think we're just going to go upstairs with this Liliana. This is going to be our fastest way to try and win this game. They are missing land drops. Plus, pass a turn. Liliana ultimates on 7. Predict. He's targeting me. I don't know why he's targeting me, but okay. Delver trigger. No flip. These Death Shadows are not good. And this is exactly the problem with Swords to Plowshares against this deck. So he killed our first Death Shadow, and he made the other 2 in our hand dead. So our opponent needs to find a land and a Council's Judgment right now. So it looks like our opponent drew a Miracle. This long pause in their draw step means they probably drew a Miracle, which means it would be a Terminus. So if they drew a Terminus, I don't think they want to cast it. Oh, they just scooped them up. Alright, that's a nice one, because they knew they weren't going to be able to beat the Liliana emblem. Alright, well that was actually a pretty sweet match for our last match. The first 4 were either us doing our thing or our opponent getting to go off and do their thing. But that last one was a highly interactive last match. Miracles is a very tough matchup for this deck, and you got to see some of the intricacies, some of the counterbalance things going on, and also some of the Swords to Plowshares nonsense. But as a whole, I think the deck is very, very good. You can beat Miracles and you can beat Death and Taxes with those Swords to Plowshares, but you just have to play very, very carefully. Outside of that, I do want to say thank you very much for watching. This is a sweet deck. Might be playing this again in the future. Again, if you like the video, we do a lot of modern and legacy content. Give us a like, give us a subscribe. It helps us out, and they are free for the channel. Alright, I do want to say thank you again. Have a great afternoon, everyone.